Thank you for viewing this training around business-to-business collaboration. My name is David Jennings and I'm an engineer within the Cisco Collaboration Experience program. One thing that we're seeing out there is that collaborating between companies is becoming increasingly vital. Not only the ability to place telephone calls between each other, which has obviously been around for years, but also the ability to securely instant message, video conference, have collaborative meetings, and also share documents. This process should be easy and intuitive for all users, and it should only be limited to meet specific security concerns where it's required. What I'd like to do today is to show you a short presentation demonstrating the difference in experience when collaborating between two different organizations, both using the Microsoft Teams client and the Cisco Webex Teams client. The idea is that this should give you a very simple process on how to demonstrate this to your customers and show them just how different the experience is. This demonstration is user focused, so we won't be going into any of the back-end functionality or any of the security concerns. These are all valid questions, but at the moment we're mainly focused on the ease of experience between the two. So starting with Microsoft Teams. Okay, so here I am in my Microsoft Teams environment here, and I'm going to create a new team. And I'm going to invite some external parties into this team so that we can communicate directly. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click the join or create a team here, and I'm going to create a new team. So I'm going to give this a new team name. So I'm going to call this my demonstration of Microsoft Teams B2B communications. And I'll give this a description here, and I'll leave the privacy as private in this case. So I'm going to click next, and that's going to now create the team. And now here I can add in my additional members. So I can type in the email addresses of external parties that I want to add in. So I'm going to add in my test user. Okay, and you can see here it says add John C at indigocloud.org as a guest. So I'm going to click there and click add. And it's going to think about it for a short while. And then we can see that this user is added as a guest, and I can close that. And here we are in the team, and I can say in here, there we go. Okay, so here we are in John C at indigocloud.org's Teams client, and as you can see, I'm sending messages internally. I have all my internal spaces here, but notice I have no notification of any external communications. I could have been invited into a space to communicate with somebody, but I wouldn't necessarily know that that was the case. So what I need to do that, I have to look in my browser, in my email client here, and I can see that I have been added as a guest to this organization. Okay, so that's confusing. And here's the name of the space that I've been added into. So I'm going to click Open Microsoft Teams. Okay, so that's interesting. I click the Open Microsoft Teams, and I don't have the option to open Microsoft Teams. So let's pick the primary one. Select Microsoft Edge, and we can see here that it opens my browser, and I'm waiting. Working. Okay, so it's now asking me to sign in. Well, that's confusing from a user perspective. What does that mean? Where am I signing into? I'm already signed into my Microsoft Teams client. I'm signed into my email client. What's going on here? I don't really understand. Well, actually, in the back end, what's happened is there's been a guest account created for my user. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually authenticating into that separate org. So I'm just going to click in here, accept. And now I get redirected. And again, what does this mean? Do I want to switch to another org? Well, I don't really want to. I mean, I want to work in my indigocloud.org, organization. That's where I belong. That's where I have all my messages. But I'm a user, and I'm curious as to what this message is. I don't, maybe I don't know. Maybe I've had a phone call and somebody's explained to me it's coming. Maybe not. But I'm just going to do what most users would do, and I'm just going to hit switch org. Oh, what's happening? So my Teams client is completely changing. I've got a new login prompt. Okay, so I'm not sure what this is for, but let me log in. Okay. Signing back in. Most users at this point will be getting bored of waiting, but here we go. We're loading Microsoft Teams. I don't know why I need to do this. So I'm joining Teams as a guest. Okay. So I'm going to breeze through this. And if I look, so what's happened to all of my spaces? I had all my conversations going on with my internal people. I was sharing content. I was receiving calls, joining meetings. And now it's completely changed. And in fact, I only have this one message here, which is from the new team. So you can see here that my Teams client has totally changed just by accepting that conversation with that external party there. I don't have access to any of my previous conversations, any of my previous content. And critically as well, if I'm receiving calls and meeting invitations and so on, I will not receive those in this client. I could be missing calls right now. And as a user, it's not very clear to me. This is Microsoft Teams. The other client was Microsoft Teams. To me, I feel like I should still be receiving the communications that I would be expecting. Now, how can I do that? Well, what I have to do is up here, you see, we can select the two different organizations that we're part of. So at the moment, I'm in this one as a guest, and I can click in this one here, and I can switch back to the original one. However, any calls now that I'm receiving in the other space, I will no longer receive in my client. So you can see here the experience is very separate between the two connections. Now, if I have conversations with just one other organization, well, maybe that's not too bad. Maybe I can kind of live with that. But if I'm communicating with external parties from dozens of different organizations, you can see how from a user perspective, this can very quickly become confusing and difficult. I would need to switch between different organizations. I wouldn't necessarily even know that I was receiving messages in different organizations. So here we go. I'm now back in my original organization and I have my original conversations going on. So what are the key points of what we've just seen? So the first thing is to initiate an external federation, we needed to use 3 different applications. We needed to use the client itself. We had to accept an email, and we also had to click a link within that email which triggered a browser session. One key thing that we saw is that a user has to authenticate as a guest within the federating organization. And once the user's connected and authenticated, they have multiple sessions that they have to manage. These are different panes of glass, and they have to switch between these, and this can be cumbersome and counterintuitive. Note that while they're switching between those different panes of glass, they also lose the ability to see messages and even calls that are incoming in those other sessions. And finally, once they're logged into that session in the alternate organization, the company policies of my own company no longer apply. The policies that are applied are the company of the organization that I have joined. So let's move on to Cisco Webex Teams and let's compare the two experiences. So here I am, I'm in my Webex Teams client, similar to the other experience. I've got my spaces on the left-hand side and I've got my messages coming through here. And I'm going to go through the same process. So I'm going to create a new space, test demonstration space. And I'm going to paste in here the email address of the external party that I want to communicate with. So I just hit save, create, and then I have my space set up. So far, a very similar experience all around. And here we can see I'm in John C's Webex Teams client, so on the other side. And the very first thing that we can see here is that immediately we have that invitation here to collaborate in the same client. I don't need to swap between my email and my browser and the client itself. Everything is configured and available in a single application. So I can see this space here, and we can see that we've got the message here. And to respond, I just need to type my response. So it really is as simple as that. Here are the key points of what we observed during that demonstration there. So the first thing that we observed was that everything is done in a single application. We don't need to switch between different applications just to receive an incoming message. It was very fast and it was very simple. I didn't need to follow any process. That message that was sent to me was available immediately. I could choose to respond to it immediately. We had access to all of our conversations, content, and notifications all at once. We didn't have to switch between individual tenants for each set of communications that we were having. So thereby we weren't at risk of missing any important phone calls, meeting requests, or messages because we could see everything in one location. And then finally, obviously, the policy that is applied to my content that I post obviously follows me wherever I am. So it doesn't matter whether I'm communicating with an external party or an internal party, the policy applied is defined by the organisation to which I am associated with, and not the organisation that I happen to be a guest within. So to conclude, we can see that federation or business-to-business communication between organisations is available in both environments. But that user experience is much more complicated and different in the Microsoft Teams environment. We had to follow through multiple steps and multiple applications just to see a message. Within Cisco Webex Teams, that business-to-business communication is baked in. It's part of the application and has been since day one. So it's a very simple and smooth process. And finally, you should be able to use a really similar process to demonstrate this to your customers and show them just how different the experience is between the two different applications. So to conclude, I'd like to thank you for your time, and I hope this demonstration was interesting and useful.